In today's episode of Tales with Meaning, we uncover the hidden lessons nature reveals about harmony and balance. Have you ever wondered why some of the smallest creatures thrive while mighty forces seem to collapse? In a remote village nestled between towering mountains and the wild river, a family faces a devastating drought. What they discover, in their most desperate hour, is more than just a way to survive. It's a lesson about how nature keeps everything in delicate balance. What happens when they defy the very harmony nature has preserved for centuries? Stay with us to find out. The village of Almapura lay in a tranquil valley surrounded by emerald green forests, which stretched endlessly along the mountains. For generations, this place had thrived, nurtured by the flowing river that meandered through the land, offering life to crops, animals, and people. The villagers had long lived in tune with their environment, respecting the trees, the animals, and the seasons. One summer, though, things changed. The rains never came. Weeks turned into months, and the once lively river was reduced to a faint trickle. The fields of Almapura dried up, crops withered, and the livestock grew weak. For the first time in many years, the village was at risk of famine. The elders were baffled. They had seen dry seasons before, but none as prolonged as this. They prayed, they hoped, but the skies remained clear and unforgiving. Among the villagers, there was a family that had recently moved to Almapura Mera, her husband Javed, and their 2 children. Unlike the other villagers, Amira and Javed were not deeply familiar with the traditions of the land. They came from the city, where water flowed freely, food was always available, and nature's rhythms felt distant. As the drought worsened, desperation set in. Amira grew anxious about her children, who were now eating smaller and smaller portions each day. One evening, as Amira fetched what little water remained from a dried-up well, she overheard the village elders speaking of a mysterious grove deep in the forest. It was said that the trees there were ancient, their roots reaching down to hidden springs untouched by the drought. The elders warned, however, that this grove was sacred. The balance of nature in that part of the forest was delicate, and disturbing it could have dire consequences. Yet, Amira's desperation clouded her judgment. She thought to herself, what if we could just take enough water to survive? Surely the forest could spare that much. The next morning, Amira convinced Jave to venture into the forbidden grove. Our children need us, she pleaded. Reluctantly, he agreed, and together, they journeyed through the forest, past thick undergrowth and towering trees, until they found the grove. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, lush and thriving, as if the drought had not touched it. The air was cool, the sound of water trickling from hidden springs was soothing. Ignoring the warnings of the elders, they began to collect water from the sacred pool. As they did, the forest seemed to shift. The air grew heavier, the once gentle breeze now a howling wind. Birds that had been perched silently in the trees suddenly took flight, screeching in alarm. The ground beneath them trembled. Still, they gathered as much water as they could. When they returned home, their children drank deeply, and for the first time in weeks, they slept soundly. Amira and Javed felt relief, believing they had made the right decision. But the next day, the village awoke to a nightmare. The river, already weakened by the drought, had stopped flowing entirely. The trees along its banks began to wilt, and the animals that depended on the river's water fled or died. The delicate balance of Almapura's ecosystem had been disrupted. Without the steady flow of water, the village began to wither faster than before. Amira, racked with guilt, approached the elders and confessed what they had done. The elders listened in silence, their faces grave. One elder, a woman named Nori, spoke softly. Nature has its own rhythm, its own way of maintaining balance. When we take more than we are given, we disrupt that harmony. Realizing the gravity of their actions, Amira and Javed returned to the sacred grove. This time, they did not come to take, but to offer. They placed what little water they had left at the roots of the ancient trees and sat in silence, hoping for forgiveness. 4 days, they waited, unsure if the grove would accept their offering. Finally, after a week of uncertainty, the skies darkened. A heavy rain began to fall, slowly at first, and then in torrents. The village rejoiced as the river began to swell, and life returned to Almapura. Though the drought ended, the lesson was clear. Nature had taught them the value of balance and harmony, and that when one element of the ecosystem is disrupted, it affects everything around it. Amira and Javed understood now that survival wasn't about taking as much as they could, but about living in harmony with the world around them. Thank you for joining us on this journey today with Tales with Meaning. The story of Amira and Javed reminds us that nature has its own balance, and when we disrupt that balance, we risk consequences far greater than we expect. Nature thrives on harmony, and so should we. This tale teaches us to respect the delicate equilibrium in life, taking only what we need and giving back to ensure the circle of life continues. Until next time, remember to honor the balance in everything you do. Thank you for watching.